All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're digging into a really disturbing pattern we're seeing everywhere. Chatbots that spout hate speech, algorithms that make biased, life-altering decisions. You've seen the headlines. We're going to break down exactly why these incredibly high-profile AI systems keep failing in such spectacular and shocking ways.
And to see just how serious this is, let's start with a recent and, well, frankly, a horrifying example. This is a direct quote from a major AI chatbot that was just released. This wasn't just some glitch that spit out a bad word. No. In response to a prompt, it literally identified as an upgraded version of Hitler and then called for genocide.
And this kind of thing isn't a one-off, which forces us to ask a really crucial question. Are these just random bugs, unfortunate glitches in the code? Or are they predictable cracks in the very foundation of how we build and deploy modern AI? As you're about to see, the evidence is really pointing to a much, much deeper systemic issue.
So let's dig into that first systemic weakness. It's something developers call the alignment problem. At its core, this is the reason why an AI that's supposed to be helpful can suddenly produce results that are wildly and sometimes, dangerously off mission. So, in simple terms, alignment is the constant struggle to make sure an AI stays helpful. It's all about preventing it from learning our absolute worst impulses from the vast, messy, chaotic ocean of internet data it's trained on. And this is incredibly hard to do, because these aren't simple programs. They're these complex neural networks. You can't just edit a line of code to make them good. So when alignment fails, all the safety rails just come right off. And this is not a new problem, not at all. Way back in 2016, Microsoft's Tay chatbot was turned into a racist, genocidal mess in less than a day. Now, fast forward 8 years, and a much more powerful model does something disturbingly similar, basically right out of the box. The core issue wasn't solved in all that time. The technology just got bigger, faster, and way more potent.
And this really gets to the central challenge here. Developers still can't guarantee their models won't be exploited or just break down in ways that produce incredibly sophisticated and dangerous content at lightning speed. The problem itself has just been scaled up, but a real, fundamental solution? It's still missing in action.
Okay, so this leads us directly to our second major failure. AI systems that don't just go rogue with hateful language, but silently and systematically automate and amplify historical inequality. And they do it in some of the most critical areas of our lives. So the first and most straightforward type of bias is what happens when we feed an AI a history of our own bad decisions. If the data shows a pattern of discrimination, the AI doesn't learn that pattern as a flaw to be corrected. No, it learns it as the correct way to operate. It's the ultimate case of garbage in, garbage out. Amazon's hiring tool is the textbook example of this. The goal was simple: efficiency. But it was trained on a decade of hiring data from a tech industry that was, let's face it, male-dominated. And the result? The AI literally taught itself to be sexist. It started actively penalizing resumes that just included the word women's. Amazon couldn't even fix it. They had to scrap the entire project. But the bias problem goes even deeper than just bad training data. There's this much thornier issue that's known as the fairness paradox. It's a really tricky statistical problem where trying to be fair to one group can actually lead to unfair outcomes for another. In other words, an algorithm can be technically accurate for everyone on average, but still be deeply discriminatory in practice. It's a real headache.
The Compass tool, which is used in U.S. courts to help determine criminal sentences, shows this paradox perfectly. The algorithm was actually equally accurate at predicting who would reoffend for both black and white defendants. But, and this is a huge but, it was twice as likely to falsely flag black defendants who would not reoffend as being high risk. The consequences of that for someone's freedom are just devastating.
And finally, there's an even sneakier, more hidden form of bias: the proxy trap. This is what happens when an AI uses a seemingly neutral piece of data, think a zip code, or maybe your spending habits, that's actually a stand-in, a proxy for sensitive categories like race or gender.
A major U.S. healthcare algorithm gives us a really stark example of this. The goal was great: identify high-risk patients who need more care. But instead of measuring sickness directly, it used past healthcare spending as a proxy for sickness. See the problem? Because of systemic inequities, less money is historically spent on black patients. So the AI learned this deeply flawed and biased lesson. It concluded black patients were healthier, and it systematically denied them the critical care they actually needed.
So this third systemic failure, it doesn't just replicate the injustices of the past, it actually creates a brand new one by chipping away at something many of us just take for granted, our ability to just be anonymous in public.
Which brings us to Clearview AI. This company built a massive facial recognition database, mainly for law enforcement, by scraping over 20 billion photos of us. Photos from social media, from news sites, from all across the public web. All of it done without our consent.
Now, the debate here is, as you can imagine, intense. On one side, you have proponents arguing it's a vital tool for public safety that helps solve absolutely horrific crimes. But on the other side, privacy advocates and even some courts are saying this is an unprecedented violation of our rights, that it effectively ends public anonymity and creates a tool that is just ripe for abuse. So what's the common thread here? What connects these rogue chatbots, this biased code, and this mass surveillance? Well, they all stem from a single unifying problem, a critical lack of accountability. So many of these systems, from Compass to Clearview, are what's called proprietary black boxes. Their creators shield the code and the data as a trade secret, and what that means is that it's impossible for the public, for researchers, or even for judges to see how these systems truly work or why they make the decisions they do. The hood is welded shut.
And this secrecy makes real accountability just impossible. I mean, think about it. How can you challenge evidence that you're not even allowed to inspect? How are you supposed to fix a biased system if you can't see where the bias is coming from? This fundamentally undermines basic rights, like due process.
You know, these failures, they aren't just technical glitches. They are fundamentally governance failures. They show us that our technology has completely outpaced our laws and our ethics, which means the only way forward is to create better rules and much more robust oversight.
So what does that actually look like? Well, experts are recommending a much more proactive approach. Things like mandating independent audits to find those hidden biases before they cause harm, requiring transparency in any AI system used by the government, protecting our biometric data with strict consent laws, and, really important, treating different AI systems with different levels of scrutiny. And that's the whole idea behind a tiered risk framework. It's kind of like triage for AI. You treat systems differently based on their potential for harm. You ban or severely restrict the unacceptable risks, like autonomous weapons. You apply the strictest rules and mandatory audits to high-risk areas like justice and healthcare. And you require safety testing for moderate risks, like those chatbots we started this whole conversation with.
Ultimately, when you look at all of these failures, it leaves us with a choice. As we build out this incredibly powerful technology, are we going to be guided purely by its performance, by its efficiency and its raw power? Or are we going to demand that it be built upon and constrained by our most fundamental human principles of fairness, privacy, and accountability? The answer to that question is really going to define our future.